And welcome to another edition of Ohio Football Weekly. We believe it or not, now we say this every week, believe it or not, it's week 7, believe it or not, it's week 5, but believe it or not, it is week number 9. So good to have you with us for this week's edition of the program. I'm Marty Bannister. Adam Dell is our showrunner, and we are so glad to have you with us as we talk high school football. 2 weeks to go in the regular season. Conference championships are up for grabs in the next couple of weeks. There are a lot of great rivalry games over the next couple of weeks. Computer playoffs. Joe Idle's website is just getting pounded on a daily basis by folks checking to see where their favorite teams stand as they hope to finish in the top 16. And it is an exciting time of year if you're a high school football fan, as we are, and as we talk high school football each and every week here on this program. Big one coming up for you tonight. We're excited about this. He coached the Cincinnati Winton Woods Warriors to the Division II state championship last season. Chad Murphy will visit with us here coming up in a couple of moments. This was a team last year that was 4-3 and then roared to the state championship and beat Akron-Hoban in Canton last year at the Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium in the Division II championship game. And Chad Murphy will visit with us coming up in a few minutes here on the program tonight. Also to join us this evening, we will dive into the southern part of the state of Ohio. We'll swing over to the southeastern part of the state. First of all, Carl Blalock from WXTQ Radio in Athens will visit with us. And then we'll move back over to the southern part of the state, get into the south central area of the state from the Southern Ohio Sports Authority. Jacob Wise visits with us tonight as we talk high school football in that part of the state. We have our usual highlights part of the program tonight. We'll have our top 7, where we look at the top 7 teams in each of the 7 division polls in the state of Ohio, as according to the Associated Press. Our friends weekly at the Ohio Prep Sports Writers Association each week put their notables out. We look at that, and we'll give you a chance to hear and see what some of the top performers, what some of the big games look like. There were a couple of long losing streaks that were snapped last week, and there are some winning streaks that are continuing as well, too. So that's all part of the program coming up tonight. Each and every week, this is where you'll find us, the best place to talk high school football right here on Ohio Football Weekly. We come to you courtesy of Yamo Media. You can find us on all, and I mean all, of the social media sites. That includes YouTube, it includes TikTok, it includes Instagram, it includes Facebook, it includes Twitter. Am I missing anything? I think I hit them all right there. I don't know. Here you go. Now, this is the easiest way to do it right here. Instead of relying on somebody like me who still most of the time has trouble opening email, you can look right here and go to social media, all these social media sites, TikTok, YouTube. That's Instagram. Yeah, that's Instagram. See, I got it. See, yeah. I'm not well, yeah, I am too. Anyway, Twitter and Facebook as well too. And that's where you can find this program and see clips of our program, which will be available for you tomorrow as well too. As if you've missed any part of this program tonight, you can go back and look at it tomorrow and see certain parts of the program that we put up for your viewing and listening and watching enjoyment. So that's all we have for you on the program tonight as well too. We'd like to get your thoughts on topics concerning high school football. Tonight we have a question up for you on our Twitter poll, and you can go to my Twitter page, at Marty Bannister, and there you see right there our Twitter poll tonight. We're asking you, should the state of Ohio play a state championship game on a Sunday in football? Currently the format is 1 game on Thursday. Cincinnati Winton Woods won the state championship last year on a Thursday. Then they come back and play 3 games on Friday, and then 3 more on Saturday. Should they play on Sunday? Well, we're getting your thoughts on that, and you can vote on the Twitter poll. And again, go to my Twitter handle. It's at Marty Bannister, and you can vote on that. We're getting a number of votes in right now. And I was rather surprised by this. Early on, keep the current format has a rather substantial lead. I think folks are afraid to go up against the National Football League on a Sunday. Although, if you look into the spring, Ohio does play state championship basketball games on a Sunday. So, and some other sports as well, too. But football, as we all know, is an entirely different animal. So, again, you can vote on that. At Marty Bannister is my Twitter handle. And you can vote on our poll again. Should the state championships have a Sunday game after playing the current format of 1 on Thursday, 3 on Friday, and then 3 on Saturday? So that's what we have for you on tonight's edition of Ohio Football Weekly. All right, let's move along now. As I mentioned, last year they won the state championship. The second time the school has won a state championship. And they did it with a coach in his first year as the head coach of the program, although he had been with the program in the past as offensive coordinator. But his team went on a run and finished as the Division II state champions. Chad Murphy, the head football coach at Cincinnati Winton Woods, visits with us this evening. Coach, good to talk to you again. We had a chance to talk last year as your team got close to the state championship game, and I had a chance to call one of your playoff games as well, too, last year. And I thought it'd be interesting to have you come back on and talk about where your program is right now, unbeaten, ranked number 2 in the state of Ohio. First of all, what's the biggest difference between this team and the one last year, Coach, that went to the state championship game and won it?
Well, there's a lot of similarities. Football is really important here. Has been for a long, long time. We've got a pretty good football team right now that's kind of been handling business. Currently sitting at 8-0. So just trying to take it one week at a time. It's a great place with great kids, and like I said, football really matters here.
And when we talked last year, I remember you telling me that how special a place Cincinnati Winton Woods is and how the kids really bought into the program. And I think a lot of that, coach, really showed the, I guess, stability of the program when Coach Parker leaves and goes over to Princeton. You come in already on the staff. That certainly had to help. But the kids, it didn't really seem, although you were 4-3 at one point, but it didn't really seem like they missed a beat as far as preparation, as far as their buying into the program. It seemed to me like, and from what you said last year, Coach, that everything went kind of smoothly in that regard.
Yeah, it really did, and this was my third different job, at a different school, and I just think the kids trusted the process. Obviously, having a relationship prior to assuming the head coaching duties was probably pretty important as well. But stability. This place has had some stability. Coach Everhart was here, I think, 10 or 11 years, and then Coach Parker took over for 10 or 11 years, and it's had a lot of stability. I told these kids last year when I got the job since day one that this place is, it's about this place, not myself. So, we kept a lot of the traditions and a lot of things that's been going on here for so long. I think that's probably could have been one of the biggest mistakes I made was to come in and try to change a bunch of things. But, you mentioned, we started out 1-2 last year, 4-3 once upon a time, and just kind of trusted the process and just kept getting better and better and focusing on ourselves. And that's kind of how we've approached this year. Obviously there's no hiding this year coming off a state championship from last year. But we've just taken it one week at a time and trying to focus on us and not so much who's on the sideline across from us, but just focusing on us, bettering ourselves. We're currently sitting at 8-0. So, looking forward to this week and seeing if we can be 1-0 again this week.
You mentioned that knowing that everyone would be gunning for your team this season, but that's something that the Winton Woods program, that's something you've had to deal with and this program's had to deal with for a number of years. It's not as if you suddenly burst onto the scene last year and rolled to the state championship. I mean, there's a great deal of tradition there. As I mentioned, you won a state championship. The program did in 2009. You played for the state championship in 2017. So it's not as if you just kind of snuck up on people last year. Your program's always kind of had that mentality of we know everyone's out to get us.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. I still think that, we play a little bit of that underdog role, and we kind of ride with that. And even this year to an extent, we're gonna use any advantage we can. Obviously, there's no hiding. And like you said, I believe that about previous years, no doubt about it. But '09, obviously winning it in '09, runner up in '17, and then obviously getting it done last year, just handling business. It's just. It's just about focusing on us, and being representing this place and the guys that played it before us. And, there's a lot of whys we have around here, not only our individual ones of our guys and our coaches, but our program as a whole, and trying to represent and make them guys proud.
What's the biggest difference, Coach, in going, and you've done this before, you've been a head coach at other places before, in Ohio and in other states as well, too. What's the biggest difference from being an assistant coach with a program and now being the head coach of a program, and especially in the unique situation you took over in for a guy who's been there for 11 years?
Yeah, I just think, you realize the importance of your assistants. Becoming a head coach again, you realize how important your assistants are, and you're only as good as your assistants. And we've got a really, really good staff, probably one of the best staffs I've been on in my 22 years. Some guys that obviously love the game, and the majority of them love Winton Woods football, and obviously love our kids. But I think that combination of loving the game and truly loving your kids and building relationships with your kids, and that was, I hate to use the word easier, that because usually with football not a whole lot easy, but that did make it a little easier, assuming the job as head coach last year, already having a little bit of a relationship with these kids.
When you hit that mark last year, as you talked about, 1-2 to start, 4-3, and we talked about how the kids really, there really was no question about them buying into where you were at. But at that 4-3 mark last year, and I know it was last year, but still you went on to win the state championship. What at that point was it at that point where everything just really kind of clicked in for your team last season?
Yeah, really it was. You know, we were learning our kids. You know, we had a new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, new special teams coordinator, new head football coach. There was a lot of new. So obviously us as a staff getting to know our kids, what they were best at. And then kind of, you know, I think at the beginning, you know, when you take over somewhere, you kind of do what maybe you know best. But then as you get to know your kids, you start to tailor your system towards the kids that you have. And I think that was as big a piece of it as anything. You know, kids, hats off to our kids, you know, obviously accepting change, not fighting it. You know, all those were huge factors. So hats off to our kids and obviously our staff.
When the season started this year, you opened up with a win over a pretty good Trotwood Madison team, and you've been rolling since then. You had a close one against a very good Kings team, which you ended up beating 28-23. They're 7-1 on the season as well, too. I asked you at the top of our conversation the big difference between this team and last year's team. Have you been on the roll since the season started? Obviously, you want to get better each week out, but is this team, was it ready to go the moment you kicked the football off back in August?
Yeah, I think it was. Our senior leaders, our team captains have done a really good job of showing up when they're supposed to be here, working their tails off, you know, doing everything we ask them to do, and then more. You know, this place has always had a lot of talent. We've kind of really emphasized the iron sharpens iron and getting better on a daily basis and things like that. But I think you know, starting off this year, you know, we knew what was going on. There was no hiding anymore, like we talked about. But they've been ready to go. You know, we've kind of made things a little interesting here the last couple of Friday nights. But once again, that was more on us than it was really on our opponent. And hats off to our opponents, both Kings and Milford, really good football teams. But, you know, we turned the ball over a couple times here the last few weeks, and we've been really good value in the football most of the year. But these last 2 weeks, we've turned it over a couple times and made things a little interesting when I don't feel like they really needed to be.
You talked a moment ago about the tradition of the program and some of the talent that's come through the doors at Winton Woods. There's a guy by the name of Mayan Williams who's having a pretty good season just a short distance from here and up the road from Cincinnati over at Ohio
Right.
State. And I can recall seeing him play back a few years ago in a game I called when they came up to Upper Arlington and won. That was one of the better performances I think I've ever seen a running back have. When you have a player like that and some of the other talent, again, that's come down the pike at Winton Woods, that has to be a good – I don't know, maybe rallying point for the kids now to say, hey, see what can happen with the work ethic and the things and the efforts you put into the program. You have a possibility of doing some great things once you get out of high school.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Obviously, you got to have great players, and I've been blessed here my first couple of years as the head coach at Winton Woods to continue that. Obviously, we've got some really talented young men, and I think you combine that with some coaching and things like that. And I think it's just such a good mix. It's been a blast. And I just feel like, you know, this football team's got a chance to play football, you know, as long as they want to play football. But we got to take care of ourselves. And number one, we got to take care of the football.
You talked about some of the talent that you have right now. Why don't you throw some names at us? Give us some guys, some of your top performers now as we go into week number 9 of the season, Coach.
Well, obviously, there's Jermaine Matthews. You know, he's a team captain. He'll be an Ohio State Buckeye next year. He's probably the best corner, or is the best corner in the state of Ohio, one of the tops in the country. Has not played a down of offense yet, but, you know, he had a 80-yard kickoff return. He's had a punt return. He's had 3 pick sixes. He had a pick 6 called back. So, you know, he has been able to influence football games and scoring points and hasn't touched the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, he's had a great season thus far. Cam Calhoun, another corner that'll attend University of Cincinnati next year. Trey Cornice, a running back that'll attend Georgia Tech next year, has been off to a really good start. So those are our 3 big name guys. But you know, I could go on for minutes upon minutes about the rest of our guys. Just a really good senior class, showing up, leading by example, and obviously a really good supporting cast of 2025s and 2024s as well.
After the state championship game last year, Coach, you said that you'll love this team forever. The one last year that won the state championship, your first go-around as the head coach. Is there any way to put into any other kind of words than that what that team meant to you last year?
Yeah, obviously, when you coach, when you begin coaching, when you begin playing, I think you always think about envision, being the best. And, to say that we were the best football team in the state of Ohio last year in Division II, obviously the ultimate prize that we could achieve. And obviously being a first year made it just that much sweeter. But, I wear this ring every day of my life. My wife had to talk me out of sleeping in it. It's just I think part of that was, in my coaching career, I've been a state of Ohio coach of the year. I've been fired, and now I've won a state championship. So, I've seen the highs, I've seen the lows, I've seen everything in between, and just not taking a day of this for granted. The opportunity to coach young people and coach the game of football, and to coach it at such a wonderful place like Winton Woods, just couldn't be more blessed.
It really makes you appreciate. I know that's an overused term in sports and almost in everyday life, but it really makes you appreciate what you're doing and where you're at right now, doesn't it?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I think last year and even this year, I think that's one of the biggest things I can express to these kids is, I'm going to be like, my job is to be the parent and to remind you of things, the important things, and not taking a day for granted, is one of those. And we try to do a really good job of that around here.
Loveland comes up on Friday night, a 4-4 team. Then you close out with 3-5 Lebanon. Right now, 8-0, ranked number 2 in the state and number 1 in your computer poll. Coach Chad Murphy at Cincinnati Winton Woods. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. I appreciate you coming on tonight. It was good talking to you last year. Congratulations on the state championship. And I got a sneaky feeling we might be talking to you in Canton again this year. Thanks very much.
Appreciate your time, Marty.
All right, take care. Chad Murphy, the head football coach at Cincinnati Winton Woods. And, yeah, that's a program. You just heard him, the 3 top players he mentioned in his team, they're all going to Power 5 schools. So it's a program that, without a doubt, is one of the powerhouses in the Cincinnati area. And they tend to play some pretty good high school football in that part of the state as well, too. Certainly you know the names that come around. But this is one, a program that has certainly laid claim to being one of the top programs, certainly in Division II, and without a doubt in the southwestern part of the state of Ohio, and that's Cincinnati Winton Woods. And again, our thanks to Chad Murphy, the head coach at Winton Woods, for visiting with us here on tonight's edition of Ohio Football Weekly. And again, they have Loveland this week, a team that's 4-4, and then they close up at home with a 3-5 Lebanon team. So far this year, they've beat Trotwood Madison, Walnut Hills, West Claremont, knocked off a couple of 7-1 teams. They beat Turpin, and 2 weeks ago, beat Kings, and coming off a 28-14 win over Milford last week. The Cincinnati Winton Woods Warriors going on their way towards, as I mentioned with Coach Murphy, I got a sneaky suspicion we're going to see them in Canton again coming up in the first weekend in the month of December. All right, we're going to take a timeout. When we come back in Ohio Football Weekly, we will go around the state with our Ohio high school football notables. We'll also give you a look at the top 7. The computer rankings are out as well, too. We might even dive into that. Second half hour of the program tonight, we're going to talk about football in the southern part of the state, in the southeastern part of the state, and then rotate over to the south central part of the state. So we have all that coming up for you tonight. Don't forget our Twitter poll, which is up. Go to @Marty Bannister, and we're asking you on tonight's Twitter poll, there it is right there, should state championship games be played on Sunday in the state of Ohio? The current format, you play 1 game on Thursday, then 3 on Saturday, and 3 on Friday, and then 3 on Saturday. Should we be playing state championship games on a Sunday? So you have a chance to vote on that as well, too. A timeout, then we come back with more of tonight's edition, week number 9, Ohio Football Weekly.
Children to have everything they'll need to live fulfilling and productive lives. Make sure the kids in your family are among the more than 350,000 participants here in Ohio who take part in high school sports.
Hey, it's Coach Howard, and I'm excited to tell you the good news about what's coming your way for this high school basketball season. Every Sunday at 6 p.m., you can catch the Coach Howard Basketball Show live on Yamo Media. We will take a close look at all the previous week's high school action, the big upcoming games, and not only that, but we'll be taking a look at the top teams and players throughout Central Ohio. I'll have special guests throughout the season, including high school coaches, players, and college coaches from all over the country. I'll also be giving out rankings of the teams and the players every 2 weeks. It's going to be a very in-depth show, and I can't wait to get started. Once again, you'll be able to watch the show live on the Yamo Media Columbus YouTube channel and Yamo Media's Facebook page. You'll also see clips posted throughout the week on all of the Yamo Media social platforms. You can also catch the audio podcast on Mondays wherever you find your podcasts. Our first episode will air Sunday, November the 20th. I'm looking forward to this upcoming high school basketball season here in Columbus, Ohio.
And if you're going to be doing a show on Ohio high school basketball, got a pretty good one right there in Coach Howard. I think that's going to be a pretty good program. I know I'll be checking it out. I'm sure you will be too on Yamo Media as we talk high school basketball. The high school basketball season and the high school football season, they overlap. So that's why that program, it starts, what was it again, Adam, November 20th? Is what, November 20th? So certainly you want to check that show out and talk a little basketball. Coach Howard's pretty well connected. So you're going to have some interesting guests come on and talk to Coach Howard and talk a little basketball. All right, this is Ohio Football Weekly. I'm Marty Bannister. Again, our Twitter poll remains up for your sampling at Marty Bannister, where we're asking you tonight, should the state of Ohio play a state football championship game on a Sunday? And so far, right now, the folks who say keep the current format have a rather substantial lead in the voting, so you have a chance to check in on that as well, too. All right, we move along now, and as promised, time to check out the top 7 in the state of Ohio. According to the Associated Press, the number 1 teams in each of the 7 divisions across the state of Ohio. Rolling right along, Cincinnati Archbishop Moeller. Last week, a big win for Moeller, beating Cleveland St. Ignatius 25-10. They have 7-1 Lakewood St. Edward this week. Moeller has scored 40 or more points in 4 of the 8 games they have played this season, and they have basically just romped past people. Only 2 of their games have been decided by a touchdown or less this season. Cincinnati Archbishop Moeller. Akron Hoban just ahead of our friends at Cincinnati Winton Woods. They beat Akron St. Vincent St. Mary last week 28-14. They have 0-8 Benedictine this week. Closest game they've played this year was a 32-20 win over Walsh Jesuit. They've already had to step outside the state of Ohio to play teams from Pennsylvania, New York, and Canada. Hoban's an independent school. It's a shame. As you see the bottom line of our story there, our recap of Hoban right now, their long-running rivalry with St. Vincent St. Mary, they play for the Shillelagh Trophy. As of right now, there's no game scheduled for next year. And I don't, as a high school football fan, I just hate it when you see teams in a district that don't play one another, or you see schools like this that are separated by about 15 minutes, 20 minutes of I-77 in the northern part of the state, or whatever the geographical locations are. I just don't understand that mentality of not playing each other in these games, especially a game like this where, I mean, I know Hoban has become a dominant force in football in the state of Ohio, but it's just really a shame that we can't get together and keep these games going. There are a lot of rivalries around the state of Ohio that have kind of gone by the wayside, and you see that in college football all over the place, where rivalries have gone away because of realignment and so many other factors involved in it. But I just hate it when rivalry games disappear. I love rivalry games, and it's a shame if Hoban and St. Vincent St. Mary can't figure a way to keep that series going. The fans lose, and the players lose too, because I'm sure kids love playing in that game. And it's just a shame they can't figure a way, if they haven't already, to get that game back on the schedule next year. All right, let's move along to Division III now in the state of Ohio. Hamilton-Baden rolling right along. They beat Dayton-Chaminade-Julienne last week, 28-21. They have 6-2 Middletown-Fenwick this week. Their last couple opponents are 13-3 going into the last couple of games of the season. The CJ game is the only one they've played this year. That's been decided by 10 or fewer points, so they've been dominant this season. Hamilton-Baden. Moving to Division IV, the Tar Blooders of Cleveland-Glenville, one of the all-time great nicknames in the state of Ohio in high school football. They blistered East Technical last week, 59-0. They have 2-5 John Adams this week. They've not allowed a point in their last 5 games. They have 6 overall shutouts. After shutting out their first opponent of the season, their next 2 games, they won them each by a touchdown. And so here they are right now, rolling on a 6-game shutout streak. The Glenville Tarblooders up in the northeast part of the state. Ted Ginn Sr., what a great job he's done with that program for years and years and years. Division 5 Coldwater last week beat New Bremen 35-28. They have a Midwest Athletic Conference showdown with Versailles coming up this week. They're the only number 1 ranked team in the state of Ohio that's not ranked number 1 in their own computer region. They're number 2 in their region. You see their mark of their last 2 opponents. They are combined 14-2. That's Division 5. In Division 6, it's Maria Stein, Marion Local, continuing to roll right along. They knocked off Anna last week, 48-0. They have 1-7 St. Henry this week. They've allowed 10 or more points in a game just one time this year. They've posted 5 shutouts, and they are at Coldwater, the number 1 team in the state, as we just showed you in Division 5, and the last game of the regular season in a Midwest Athletic Conference showdown. And wrapping things up with Division 7, it's been a rough last couple of weeks for Warren JFK. They were supposed to play St. Thomas Aquinas last week. That game was canceled, though, because of roster issues from St. Thomas Aquinas. So this week they get back into play with 0-8 Cleveland Central Catholic. Now, they've already clinched a playoff spot, has Warren JFK, and they have won 1 game this year by 1 point when they beat 7-1 Garfield 22-21. But for the most part, they have been rolling right along and get back into play this week after a bye week, unforced bye week last week. So that's your top 7 around the state of Ohio, according to the Associated Press, in the 7 various divisions in the state of Ohio. Another big week last week. Notables around the state of Ohio. Let's dive into that and find out some of the big performances and some of the top winning streaks. And there was even a long losing streak that was snapped last week. Congratulations to John Livengood, the 17th head coach in the state, unofficially, to go over the 300 win mark. He has the 3rd best winning percentage and only the 6th to do it at the same school out of 32 seasons. Wow, 32 years. He's won 21 Firelands Conference championships, 8 regional championships, and has taken a team to the state championship game in 2009. So congratulations to John Livengood, the head coach at St. Paul, going over the 300 win mark. In the western part of the state, Jackson Cleather kicks 4 field goals to help number 4 in Division 3, Tip City Tippecanoe, get past Piqua 23-20. Tip had trailed 20-13 entering the 4th quarter of that game in the western part of the state last week. In Ansonia, they had 10 different players carry the ball at least one time, a statistician's nightmare, as they rolled past Tri-County North by the final of 44-8. Again, that mindset in that part of the state about how they play the game of football is just remarkable. Back up to the northwest part of the state, Cary continues to roll right along. They've now won 23 straight games, the latest, a 54-0 win in Northern 10 Conference play over Bucyrus. The Blue Devils lost their 2021 season opener to Hopewell Loudon, then went through 15 straight games last year, winning the state championship, and they've won 8 straight to open up this season. So Cary continues to roll right along. That's one of the longest winning streaks in the state of Ohio at 23 straight games. Back over to the western part of the state, and Greenville. This young man, Brock Short, 349 yards and 3 touchdowns, only carried the football 38 times to help the Green Wave to a 35-20 win over Vandalia Butler last week in play in the western part of the state. Madison, the Madison Rams, Mansfield Madison, snapped a 15-game losing streak by beating Ohio Cardinal Conference rival Mount Vernon 35-0. Scott Valentine's first win as the Ram head coach. Hunter Hutchison backed the win with a couple of rushing touchdowns, and they also had a 30-yard pick 6 by Zach Glasgow. So congratulations to Mansfield Madison, snapping a 15-game losing skid that dated back to last season. Convoy Crestview rolls right along as they knocked off Plymouth 39-13. Owen Barker, Addison Reimer, and Michael Mays combined for 6 rushing touchdowns, and they clinched their 4th consecutive share of a conference title, or they can do that with a win against St. Paul. That's we just talked about John Livengood at St. Paul a short time ago, as they get St. Paul this Friday, so it should be a big game in that part of the state of Ohio, in the north central part of the state of Ohio. Springfield Wildcats moving right along as they beat number 4 Centerville last week 38-10. Bryce Schondelmeyer threw for 345 yards and a couple of scores. Maurice Douglas has done a tremendous job with that Springfield program. I can tell you a little bit from past knowledge. For a number of years, Springfield was divided by 2 high schools. It was Springfield North and Springfield South. And the general consensus was, once the schools came together, well, the state championships were just going to roll because of the amount of talent that came out of those 2 schools. Well, it took them a while to get things going, and they had to find the right guy to step in to get those things going. and they hired Maurice Douglas to take over as the head football coach. Last year they played for the state championship game, lost in the title game to Lakewood St. Ed, and they're going to make a run at it again this year. Springfield's a pretty good football team in the western part of the state of Ohio. So congratulations to the Wildcats, the old stomping grounds, Springfield, Ohio, as they continue to roll right along so far this season. Springfield with a move this season is still in the top 10 in the state of Ohio. Our notables around the state of Ohio as far as high school football is concerned here in week number 9. But again, it's amazing. When we started this program back in August, Adam and I looked at each other a couple of times thinking, well, how are we going to get to week number 3? How are we going to get to week number 4? How are we going to book guests? And all of a sudden we are week number 9, and the playoffs are just around the corner. And that's an exciting time. Can't wait for that on October the 28th when the playoffs start. Again, if you're not familiar, top 16 teams in each region make it to the playoffs. The top 8 seeds host in the first round, and if they win, the higher seed will then host in the following round. And then after the first 2 rounds, games go to neutral sites, and also games go back to Friday and Saturday once you get past the first 2 rounds. So the first 2 weeks of playoffs, the games are on Fridays only. So if you're looking ahead, keep that in mind. There'll be no playoff games on Saturday nights, the first 2 rounds, but then after that, everything goes back to the old Friday-Saturday format that teams had as far as the postseason is concerned in Ohio high school football. So just around the corner, October 28th. Boy, just can't wait for the start of the high school football playoffs. Should be a boatload of fun, as it always is in the state of Ohio. Let's take a time out. When we come back, we will start our look around the state of Ohio. We'll go to the south central part of the state. From the Southern Ohio Sports Authority, our good friend Jacob Wise will visit with us, and we'll talk about how things are going in that part of the state. Some pretty good football being played down there these days, and we'll do that when we talk to Jacob Wise when we come back. Ohio Football Weekly rolls on.
Hello, I am Annie J. Ross Womack, the Executive Director of the Ohio Sickle Cell and Health Association, and I'm here to talk to the parents and student athletes about a very important topic. The NCAA has instituted different standards for all divisions of student athletes. Before you can play sports in any college or university, you must present a negative trait status or hemoglobin status documentation. Your hemoglobin status is taken at birth with the newborn screening. And what they do is they run your blood for any abnormality or any birth defect. There are thousands of newborn screening birth defects in this country. For more information about sickle cell disease, sickle cell trait testing, you can call our offices at 614-228-0157. Or you can visit us via web at ohiosicklecell.org.
What's your favorite high school sports memory? A late inning rally? A game-winning shot? A photo finish? Maybe it's a pep rally or a pregame ritual. Maybe it's the euphoria of a late-night bus ride home after a hard-fought win. Maybe it's having pizza with teammates after the game. Now, imagine if it never happened at all. School sports need your help. With budgets getting tighter, it's more than the games that are on the line. It's all the traditions, the community pride, the culture of your hometown high school. Plus, all those memories that are on the line, too. What can you do? It's simple. Buy a ticket when you can. Go to a game. Take the whole family. Let's do everything we can to keep those cherished school sports memories alive.
This message presented by the Ohio High School Athletic Association and the Ohio Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
Are you an enthusiastic sports fan? Want to have fun and get in on the action?
Heck, yes, that'd be awesome.
Have great attention to detail? Want to stay active?
Definitely.
Want to give back to the student athletes in your community?
Obviously, yes.
Then you'd make an excellent high school sports official. We need more officials in Ohio, because with no high school officials, there are no high school sports. Sign up today at highschoolofficials.com.
And welcome back to another edition of Ohio Football Weekly. I'm Marty Bannister. It is good to have you Wednesday evening as we talk a little high school football, week number 9 of the 2022 season. As we told you at the top of the program, we thought in the second half hour of the show we would swing over to the southern part of the state. The last couple of weeks we've been to the northwest part of the state. We've been to the northeast part of the state. We have covered central Ohio. But let's find out how things are going in an area where there are some pretty good football teams this year. Let's drop down to the south central part of the state of Ohio. And joining us right now from the Southern Ohio Sports Authority and various and other sundry media outlets in that part of the state of Ohio is our friend Jacob Wise. Good to see you tonight. But I'm glad there's no hockey game you had to go to tonight. You can visit with us here this evening and talk a little high school football. Good to see you, Jacob.
Friday night. I get Friday off to go to the opener.
All right. Well, we're glad we're not on Fridays and we're on Wednesday, and you can talk a little high school football with us. As I mentioned, the part of the state, the south central part of the state, there are a number of leagues in that area, headlined by a league that you and I both know so very well, the Scioto Valley Conference, the Frontier Athletic Conference, and, of course, the Southern Ohio Conference, which is one that has produced great football teams over the years. And I think sometimes that part of the state, Jacob, gets kind of overlooked when it comes to high school football and the amount of talent that comes out of that region of the state. There are some pretty good teams this year, and there have been some pretty good teams in the past in that part of the state, haven't there?
Yeah, I think part of it is probably somewhat due to the fact that some of those schools are a little bit smaller. They're not necessarily long-time perennial powerhouses like some of them, that get a lot of the press. But it seems like there are a few that most years are really good, make some deep playoff runs. You look at a team like Ironton that here lately has been really, really good over the last several years and won some very exciting football games. Zane Trace, you know as well as I do, playing some really good football right now, and starting to maybe pop up some of those polls and popping into people's minds as we enter week 9 here, getting towards playoff time. But yeah, it's I would say just as good as about anywhere else in the state.
One of the things that is interesting about that region, Jacob, and especially for some of the bigger schools, Chillicothe, Washington Courthouse, Miami Trace, Jackson, has been the ability to find a stable home, a stable league. I mean, those schools have bounced around. Chillicothe was, for the longest time, in the Ohio Capital Conference. There used to be the old South Central Ohio League. There have been just a number of leagues that have kind of popped up and then dropped off, and then teams have kind of battled for a place to find a place to call home. But I think over the last couple of years, the Frontier Athletic League has kind of stabilized things, I think, for some of those larger schools in that part of the state, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's nice, too, because they've been able to bring along some of their longtime rivals, and that's always fun from previous leagues. But, yeah, the first couple of years, it was pretty top-heavy, but I think now over the last couple of years, they've stabilized a little bit. And I think because the top teams in that league in more than just football have been as good as they've been lately, they've kind of raised what the lower teams traditionally in that league have had to do. So I think, this year especially, we've seen some really good football games that maybe some people didn't expect to see. I mean, last week we had one with Chillicothe and Courthouse, and I think Washington maybe surprised a few folks that, they're for real this year.
And speaking of surprising a few folks, I would have to think, Jacob, that Chillicothe falls into that category too. Scott Bartholomew in his first year. And I think when they hired him, a lot of people kind of sat back and took notice of that because of his background and the success that he's had as a high school football coach. But I think a lot of folks thought when he took over at that program, they might make a little bit of a turnaround. I don't know that anybody expected it to be this fast, as right now they're 7th in their region and they're 6-2 on the season. But I think people, when they saw Scott Bartholomew take that job, Jacob, they went, okay, this program's going to be on the come here in the next couple of years.
Yeah, as a Pickaway County guy, myself growing up, I know what that guy has been able to do in his career as a high school football coach. I think maybe, like you said, a little bit faster than what people thought. But a couple of transfers in when you have a guy that's committed to LSU playing on your team, that certainly helps. I think some of the excitement, too, with the track record that Scott has over the years at a couple other places, that I think that gets the players excited, too. And one of the big things for that Chillicothe program was just kind of boosting the numbers up. So, they had more players, they had more competition in practice. There was a little bit more of some oomph behind that program. Mm-hmm. and you weren't running guys ragged, especially at a school that size. And year one, boy, I think it's exceeded a lot of people's expectations. Even some folks I thought maybe that were grumbling a little bit about the coaching change. I think they're starting to come around now.
But the one team, though, that everybody seemingly every year in that league chases, that's the Ironmen of Jackson. And they're continuing to roll right along. When you talk about tradition, they're 6-2 right now. They've lost to some tough teams. And they played Ironton. They played Wheelersburg. They played Tri-Valley. I mean, they drop off and play some pretty good teams. And that's a program, though, I think that's kind of the one that everybody really looks at when you start thinking of the 6-team Frontier Athletic Conference. It's the Jackson Ironmen, the one that everybody is shooting for each and every season.
Yeah, I mean, everybody likes to beat the Ironmen. Tough place to go play. Mm-hmm. Very physical team always. I mean, it's always one of those games where, players after they play Jackson are like, man, I feel maybe a little worse going into the next week than I did any other week throughout the season. So, they beat you up a little bit. It's one of those games that you get excited for. Obviously, big one coming up here in week 10 for the Ironmen in that FAC, but that's one that I think players really get up for. And, talking about teams raising the level of the rest of the league, I mean, that's certainly one of them you point to right off the bat.
And you talked about that Week 10 game. It's Jackson and Chillicothe in week number 10. So I think certainly a lot will be riding on that, although both teams have clinched playoff berths right now with the top 16 per region format in effect in Ohio. Let's move down a little further to the southern part of the state, Jacob. We mentioned the Southern Ohio Conference, and that's a league for the longest time that Wheelersburg has kind of been the big guy in that league in both divisions. And they've been a force year in and year out. They've played for state championship games. And not only in football, but year in and year out. That school on the Ohio River, if it's not volleyball, it's girls basketball. If it's not girls basketball, it's baseball. That's a program down there that's really churned out some talented teams in a various number of sports.
Yeah, I mean, good gracious, Wheelersburg baseball, you talk about that, and it sounds maybe crazy to say, but maybe that kind of overshadows what they've done in some other sports. Softball just won a state title. Football is always a game you look at on your calendar if you're an opponent and say, boy, we got to be ready to go for that one. And, Wheelersburg playing some good football. One of those, mini teams right now in the area that, hasn't lost many games. Wheelersburg kind of in the mix with a couple other teams, 6-2 right now. But, you look at the top teams in that southeastern Ohio area, you're talking Wheelersburg, always one of the top 10, 11 teams out of the whole group. And never, ever an easy win, no matter what sport you're playing when you take on Wheelersburg.
Moving over to the Ohio Valley Conference, that's where Ironton resides right now, the Fighting Tigers. And if you've never had the chance to see a game at Tank Stadium, you've got to do yourself the favor and go watch a game at that facility. It is remarkable. Is love affair too strong a term for the feeling that people have with that football program at Ironton, Jacob?
I think that's one of those places where if you're just an Ohio football or football fan in general, that's on your top 5, 6 places in the state that you have to go watch a game. And it's not just the stadium; it's the experience of what that crowd is. I know you had Mike Hearn on last week and talking about over there in Northeast Ohio, talking about that's kind of a way of life. I tell you what, Ironton would probably have a little bit of a bone to pick with that because very, very exciting football team. Talk about a team that's scored 255 points this year, and they've given up 38. I mean, unbelievable what they've been able to do here lately, and undefeated so far, 5-0 in their conference, 8-0 overall, and they're rolling right now. I don't think I'd want to be suiting up against those guys right now.
The goal there every year is if they don't get to Canton or wherever the state championship's being played, it's a failure of a season. And that's the mentality that they have down there. And that's in the Ohio Valley Conference. Portsmouth is in that league, too, and that's a team that the last couple of years. Well. Yeah, they're 5-3 right now, and that's the last game of the regular season is Ironton Portsmouth at Portsmouth this season. So that's some of the strong teams in the Southern Ohio Conference. Let's go back up to the Southern Valley Conference as we start to wrap up our conversation. That's a league where, once again, we've got some pretty good football teams. Zane Trace is rolling right along undefeated. Unioto's at 7-1. Paint Valley's at 5-3. Unioto kind of handed it to Paint Valley last week, pulling away in the second half. That league this season, Jacob, I think it's fair to say it's kind of top heavy. You get past the first 3, and then the next 5 schools are all battling for playoff spots. But I don't think, I think a lot of the coaches would even agree, they may not have the talent that those top 3 teams have right now in that league.
Yeah, we saw it. You and I both saw it last week with Paint Valley and Unioto, and the week before that with Unioto and Zane Trace. I think Paint Valley and a lot of folks expected Paint Valley to be more in that game, and it was an exciting first half. Paint Valley's up 3 points at halftime, and you wonder if Unioto had a little bit of a hangover from that tough loss. Instant classic the week before at Zane Trace. It knocked their perfect record off. It took away the chances of picking up a gold ball in the SVC, which is a big deal in the SVC. People talk about that kind of stuff all the time. But, Zane Trace, boy, they throw the ball well. They throw it to the running backs out of the backfield. They run the ball really well, but their defense has been absolutely outstanding. Their linebackers run well. Their defensive line basically plays in the backfield seemingly all week. But Unioto's, that's a good football team too. They could beat Zane Trace on their day. They throw the ball really well. They've got a phenomenal receiver in Maddox Fox. They've run the ball well. In fact, the guy who's not even listed as their starting running back in Griffin might be their best running back. So they come at you in a number of ways, and both teams have played some really strong defense. That those two teams are certainly in front. And of course, somebody who roots for chaos. If things go interestingly here this week, you could be looking at a 3-way tie atop the SVC. But I don't know that Zane Trace can be taken down right now.
The interesting thing about looking at Zane Trace is the impact that Heath Hinton has had on that program since taking over 3 seasons ago. And if you know anything about high school football in the state of Ohio, the name Hinton certainly comes to mind when you think about great coaches and successful programs. Ron Hinton at Amanda Clear Creek for all those years. Tim Hinton's on Ryan Day's staff right now and has been with Urban Meyer in the past at Ohio State. That name carries a lot of weight to it, and Heath Hinton constantly talks about it. I know you've had conversations with him as well too, but he constantly talks about relying on those guys to help him each and every week. And he's been a coach of the year in the state of Ohio, Heath Hinton has. So it's not as if he's treading water in this and just figuring it all out, but to have that kind of pedigree to go back on, that's a huge advantage, isn't it?
Yeah, I think guys like that too, there is no feeling out period. It's, I want to win now. We're going to figure out how to win with, what's in place and however much you can change in one season. And then you just go up and up from there. And we talked about Scott Bartholomew earlier at Chillicothe. Hinton, maybe you step it up even another notch of a guy that can excite the players and get the school excited about moving up the ranks. And, boy, we've really seen it this year with just a sharp, crisp team in Zane Trace. And it's a guy that runs offense that makes it very difficult for defenses to figure out what you're going to do because you have 3-4 guys on the field at a time. He does a good job of calling plays and allowing his players to make decisions on the field. You talk about good coaches like him, they find ways to let their players take ownership and feel like, it's not just doing what you're told. Obviously that's part of it, but those guys, they have some input. They know that they have to make plays and they're empowered to go do that. And I think that's a powerful thing when you're a high school football player.
The southern part of the state of Ohio. Jacob Wise from the Southern Ohio Sports Authority. Always good to see you, my friend. I know I'll run into you here before the next couple of days or probably even in the next week or so. Always good to see you, Jacob.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, Jacob Wise visiting with us from the Southern Ohio Sports Authority. Does a great job. Also the voice of one of the most powerful programs and franchises in the Great Lakes or in summer baseball around the country in the Frontier Athletic in the Frontier League, the Chillicothe Paints, who have just seemingly year in and year out under the stern guidance, the stable guidance of one Brian Menino, who helps form that team each and every year. They have won numerous championships in that summer collegiate baseball league, and Jacob does a great job of calling their games as well too. All right, are we taking a break or are we moving along here? What are we doing here? Okay, we'll get a quick break and then we come back and we'll continue our discussion on high school football. See, we just kind of roll by the seat of our pants 99.9% of the time here, which is what makes it, well, somewhat entertaining. Ohio Football Weekly continues in a moment.
Hello, I am Annie J. Ross Womack, the Executive Director of the Ohio Sickle Cell and Health Association, and I'm here to talk to the parents and student athletes about a very important topic. The NCAA has instituted different standards for all divisions of student athletes. Before you can play sports in any college or university, you must present a negative trait status or hemoglobin status documentation. Your hemoglobin status is taken at birth with the newborn screening. And what they do is they run your blood for any abnormality or any birth defect. There are thousands of newborn screening birth defects in this country. For more information about sickle cell disease, sickle cell trait testing, you can call our offices at 614-228-0157. Or you can visit us via web at ohiosicklecell.org.
And we'd like to thank the folks at the Ohio Sickle Cell and Health Association for being a sponsor of our program. They are our presenting sponsor here on Ohio Football Weekly. For more information on sickle cell disease and how you can be prepared, please visit ohiosicklecell.org. High school football talk continues, Ohio Football Weekly. Let's move over now to the southeastern part of the state. And we're mainly talking the area from Logan to that part of the state of Ohio, southeast Ohio, Athens, the Tri-Valley Conference, and some other teams in that part of the state. Visiting with us right now is Carl Blalock from WXTQ Radio in Athens, the home of the one and only Joe Burrow and the Athens Bulldogs, and of course, the Ohio University Bobcats. Carl, good to see you, my friend. Let's dive into, before we go into football itself, just give folks an idea. You've been at Ohio University for a couple of years now. The reaction and the, I'll use this term again, I guess the love affair that community has with Joe Burrow and the Burrow family. It's really pretty special down there, isn't it?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, you can't go – I've been to a few Athens volleyball games, a few Athens football games, and there's always one person at least who has a number 9 jersey, whether it be an LSU jersey or a Cincinnati Bengals jersey, especially with it being southeastern Ohio, a lot of Bengals fans already, and then you throw in, you've got the hometown hero on the team. That's just a little bit of icing on the cake, but it's huge down here. It's huge to see the love affair between Joe Burrow and everybody else. I mean, Joe Burrow, and even talking about with what he does to still help the community with the new foundation. I remember sitting there and seeing some new stuff about that. How important it is to really help out the community as well for Joe. So I think it kind of goes a little bit both ways, especially with that new foundation for Joe. But it is incredible how much they really love Joe Burrow down here.
And if you're not familiar with the area, there's Athens, then there's the Plains, which is where Athens High School is located and where Joe Burrow went to school. The Plains, Athens is the setup. And you go into the Plains and you see home of the Heisman Trophy winner, Joe Burrow. And Joe Burrow, they've done so much to the high school and donated as well, too. And you really like to see an athlete who has achieved what he has give back to the community. Not only Carl, from the athletic standpoint of it as well, too. But what you just mentioned, making sure the community, he remembers the community where he came, and he helps take care of the people in that community. It's a pretty special thing, isn't it?
It is. It really is. And, I mean, it's something that you love to see. You always hope that, you remember where you come from. And for Joe, I mean, that's the fact. He remembers where he comes from. And, I mean, everywhere in that school, the football stadium's named after him. The first thing you walk in when you see coming to the high school, right by the gymnasium's a little glass case with, jerseys from him in high school, him in college, and him in the pros. Got the Gatorade Player of the Year banner. And, it's just how important it is to the community and how important, everything is to the community down here. I mean, it's not just him. I'm pretty sure that entire 2013, 2014 football teams, they're remembered very fondly down here. So it's not just Burrow as well. It's that entire team, that entire era of Athens football.
Right, let's talk about that area of football, which includes Athens, as far as high school football is concerned. There are some pretty good teams in that part of the state. And as I mentioned with Jacob Wise a short time ago, this is another one of those parts of the state. And I guess maybe it's just because, Carl, of how spread out everything is, and we're not talking major metropolitan areas as far as where these schools are concerned. It kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit overall as far as some of the talented teams are concerned. But maybe run down some of the better teams, because there are some good teams in this area playing high school football right now, Carl.
There are some good teams, and there's a lot of key matchups in both divisions of the Tri-Valley Conference. The game I'm covering this week is going to be Nelsonville York versus Winton County, and that's a game I've had circled since probably last year. I mean, the Winton County Vikings, they're up and coming. They haven't won a Tri-Valley Conference title since, I believe, 1999. Coming against the Nelsonville York Buckeyes, who they won it last year. And last year they won it beating Winton County on a really rainy, ugly night. They won 20-7. And talking with Coach Rusty Richards, I mean, it's going to be another dogfight where there might not be any rain, luckily, but there's going to be a lot of really, really good football being played. You're going to see a lot of high scoring, or not high scoring, but physicality. The physicality between these two teams will be incredible. And they're two evenly matched teams. Nelsonville York has looked very good with a lot of running the ball. They have a really stout defense as well. And I mean, this is a team that they played Wellston a few weeks ago. Their varsity offense ran 6 plays the entirety of the game. 6 plays. 5 of them were touchdowns, and the one play that wasn't a touchdown ended up being he was 10 yards behind the 10 yards behind the defense, and he tripped on a little turf monster. Aside from that, I mean, this is a really potent offense, and they really show that. They really show how good of an offense they have.
I'm just looking at their numbers, Carl, and only one game this year, 2 games rather, have they been held below 30 points. Their season opening win over Trimble, 16-0, and then the following week when they were shut out by Newark Catholic. But year in and year out, that's a program, and we're speaking of Nelsonville York, they've done that. They've been a dominant team in that Tri-Valley Conference for a number of years, haven't they?
They have, and I mean, Rusty Richards, Nelsonville York's head coach, is somebody who he always sits there, and he's been telling me all year, our goal is to put paint on the wall. Paint on the wall, meaning they've got a huge walk-in. When you walk in, they've got a wall with all the Tri-Valley Conference championships that they have. And they want to put more paint on that wall. They want to put a 2022 underneath the football championship on that wall. And that's something that they're going to have a chance to do if they beat Vinton County this week. And as you talked about earlier with Ironton, it's a failure if they don't make it to the state title game and win the state title game. I mean, it's kind of the same way for Nelsonville York. If they don't win the Tri-Valley Ohio, then it's kind of a failure for them. Obviously you still have good seasons along there, but this is a team that, they have that tradition. And this is another team with that tradition. They've got really good running backs in Hudson Stalder and Tommy Mitchell that really carry the brunt of the load. You have a really good wide receiver, Leighton Logie, more of a tight end, but he can catch the ball. He can run the ball. Great player. You got their quarterback who just started this year, and that was kind of the reason why they had a little bit of that slow start. Their first 2 games only scored 16 points against Trimble on a shutout, 16-0, and then got shut out against Newark Catholic. Micaiah Williams, their quarterback, he kind of took a little bit of time to, get into the flow of things, but once he has, that offense has really been going without any problem. And I mean, winning last week 47-14 over Alexander, which that's a solid Alexander team.
Sounds that way. You mentioned the big game coming up with Vinton County this week. Nelsonville York 7-1, Vinton County's 5-3. Who are some of the other top teams in the Tri-Valley Conference this year, Carl?
Meigs and Alexander have been really interesting. Alexander, they've looked solid in some conference games. They've won the games that have been given to them. They lost to South Point, they lost to Vinton County and Nelsonville York, but especially against Nelsonville York, they looked really solid in the first half, and they're a team that they're going to be building up. They don't have very many seniors on that team, so they're going to be building up that program, and that's a really theme across the entire Tri-Valley Conference is there's a lot of very young teams. One team jumping over to the TVC Hawking that normally has that historically very good aura around it is the Trimble Tomcats. And this year, they're really young. They only have about 3 or 4 seniors this year. And, there's a lot of freshmen and sophomores that head coach Phil Ferris, he's sitting there and he's going, there's a lot of people who normally they wouldn't be playing for us, but they're playing for us and they're doing a really good job at the moment. And obviously they're kind of struggling a little bit, but they have a big game this week against the Waterford Wildcats. Trimble still has a chance to take at least a share of the TVC Hawking title if they can beat Waterford. And Trimble's season this year, they're 2-6 on the season. 2-6 on the season. Only victories against Southern and Belpre. But they've looked very good. They played a D3 school, Woodward out of Cincinnati, that looked solid, and they almost beat them. One of the top teams in Division 7, the River Pilots. Trimble played them really close. As long as Trimble doesn't make too many mistakes, they made mistakes on special teams is what killed them in one of their league games, their league loss against the Eastern Eagles in Week 7. I think that if Tremble keeps those mistakes to a minimum, they have a chance against Waterford. And this is a Waterford team that's looked very good the entire season. They gave a half to Fort Fry, and that's something that, with the exception of Lindsley, West Virginia, not very many people have given games to the Cadets. So Waterford's a very solid team. And then the Eastern Eagles kind of popping up. Head coach Jason Jackson, in his first year, coming from Ravenswood, West Virginia, he's looked very solid. He's really built a very good culture there. He prides himself on his defense and forcing turnovers. Forcing turnovers has been the big thing for Eastern all year. They forced about 5 turnovers in their victory over Tremble week 7 when I saw them. So the Eastern Eagles might be an up-and-coming program that they might be able to build something down here in Southeast Ohio.
Tri-Valley Conference play, a big one coming up on Friday night in Nelsonville, York, and Vinton County. Carl Blalock from WXTQ Radio in Athens. Always a pleasure. Good update. You did a good job of running down some of the teams. And again, as I said, a league that's kind of often overlooked in high school football in the state of Ohio. Some good football being played in the Tri-Valley Conference. Carl, thanks very much, my friend.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
All right, let's wrap it up then with another look at our poll tonight. Again, on our Twitter page, we're asking you again, should the state football championship games be played on Sunday? Currently, the format is 1 game on Thursday, 3 on Friday, then 3 on Saturday. Right now, keep the current format, has a rather resounding lead. And again, I'm a little surprised at that. I thought some folks might be more in favor of seeing some games played on Sunday, but nonetheless, that's where things stand. You still have about an hour or so to vote on that. So that will do it for tonight's edition of Ohio Football Weekly. We thank Chad Murphy, the head football coach at Cincinnati Winton Woods, Jacob Wise from the Southern Ohio Sports Authority, Carl Blalock from WXTQ Radio in Athens, and we thank you for being with us. And again, find clips and highlights from this program available all across our social media sites. There you see them, and you have a chance to sample what we've done tonight. Check out the entire program and some of the highlights and some of the better segments of this show available all for you on our social media sites. Adam Dell's our showrunner. Another great job as always. I'm Marty Bannister. We're back with you next week to look at week number 10, the final Friday of the high school football season, and then we go into the playoffs. Enjoy your Football Friday, everyone.